Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to this today's leadership dialogue, especially for FMCG sector. This is a prelude to the big leadership summit that we are going to have under BBF banner on 5th of November. But prior to that, to discuss all the leadership issues that we have currently in Bangladesh, so BBF Bangladesh Brand Forum decided to have some sectoral dialogues and to identify the key challenges that we have with the development of each of the sectors, which can be discussed at large with the larger group during the physical event on 5th of November. It is my pleasure to introduce the panelists today. With me, first, I have so much of fond memories, so
আমি শুনতে পাচ্ছি না কিন্তু Ashraf মানে
Minhaj শুনতে পাচ্ছো? Just show me a thumb.
Yeah, very clear here.
Okay, Parvez, আমার মনে হয় তোমার ওখানে বোধহয় ভাই কোন একটা কানেকশন ইস্যু আছে because other people can hear me. Just check. Okay, so let me introduce. So first, I would like to introduce Mr. KSM Minhaj. We have very long association. Minhaj is the CEO and Managing Director of Unilever Consumer. Minhaj has a very illustrious career. He started with Nestle, where we were actually in the same team for quite some time. Then Minhaj moved to Unilever, and then he worked in sales and marketing, and then he rose to the position of CEO of Unilever Consumer. Then I have Mr. Aditya. Aditya, as you know, I mean, what to say? He was the managing director for Marico during those, during those time when Marico came in Bangladesh and they set the footprint. They then got into public, had massive distribution gain in the market. They changed the rule of the branding and distribution in many areas, and Aditya was spearheading that journey on behalf of Marico. Now after that, Aditya is doing now his social enterprise. He is leading his own enterprise called Ujjwala, and at the same time he is a very renowned consultant. He is consulting to many Indian and Bangladeshi companies, international companies, who wants to come to Bangladesh and realize the potential of Bangladesh. Because he worked very closely with FICCI, Foreign Investors Chamber of Commerce, and he was also member of the Indian Chamber of Commerce in Bangladesh. As a result, he has a wide network which helps companies to come and explore and realize the potential in Bangladesh. So Aditya, welcome to this show. And I have my friend, Mr. Parvez Saiful Islam. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Square Foods. He also started his career in multinational company. He actually, served Bangladesh Army for 3 years prior to that, and then he joined FMCG, and then he worked in ready-made garments industry. He worked in apparel industry, automotive distribution, and now he is heading Square Foods. So I think Parvez is having quite a bit of connection issue, so for which actually he's going on and off. But anyway, let's start the dialogue. So why we are meeting today? We have some key data to share with you. Now, Bangladesh currently the size of the economy is little over $400 billion, right? Now, in this entire South Asia region, Bangladesh is also recognized as the fastest growing GDP, right? More than 8%. Even after COVID, the growth rate of Bangladesh was significant, which got really, global attention and a lot of appreciation. Also, the kind of initiatives that government took to, drive the vaccination program and all, it was very, praiseworthy. So as a result, what we see, Bangladesh is still moving towards, its desired level, desired journey, where we are supposed to become, we have some milestones of 2030, where we want to become the achieved all the SDG goals, and by 2041 we want to become a developed nation. Now, while we desire to become a developed nation, in that journey, the key ingredient for this, what we feel, will be the people. Skilled group of people who will take the country to that level. Now, we always talk about the demographic dividend that we have, because primarily Bangladesh has youth as its powerhouse. And if I may share, about 50 million people of Bangladesh are below the age of 15, who will be the future workforce. Now, when we are talking about all these demographic dividends, the growth potential, Bangladesh doing so well, but in a global competitive context, are we really ready? Can we really compete against all these global forces? Can we really take our country to our desired level, where we want to reach by 2041? And today we will explore that, we will try to analyze that from the FMCG sectoral point of view. So my first question, an open question to all the three. I mean, you can just mention 3-4 reasons. What are the major shifts that you feel FMCG sector will go through in the next few years, in next 3 to 5 years? If I may start with Aditya Shome. I mean, if you can just say 3-4 major shifts, and then Minhaj, and then Parvez, from your respective angles.
Yeah, thanks, Ashraf. I think the plates have been shifted and have been shifting for the last 3-4 years. It's not something that which we try and attribute it to a pandemic kind of a scenario. So we have a lot of people who are talking about things have shifted after the pandemic, but in my view, the entire consumer behavior, mindset, and everything has been shifting for 4 years. Like one of the biggest example is the e-com platforms. We try and attribute a lot of credit to e-com as a platform which has evolved. But the e-com platform which has evolved is not because of a distribution innovation or whatever it is. It is actually the long quenching thirst of a consumer that my voice needs to be heard, and I need to be the decision maker and not somebody else making that decision for us. So from an FMCG spectrum, if you ask me, the shift which has happened, which we've seen in an e-com platform, there are similar shifts which will happen within the segment and categories of the FMCG space. Now, so if you ask me from a segment perspective, to me, the skin as a category, hair colors as a category is something to watch out for, because that's a segment which involves a lot of individual consumer choice making. What's good for my skin, what do I prefer, is something which I feel I know the best. Similarly, in the color segment and in this personal care space, and specifically to skin and color, is something which is going to be very interesting. The other thing which is going to be a shift which will happen is how do we will see a lot of signature brands mushrooming over the next 3-4 years, and they will thrive, and the focus is going to move towards the how niche, how profitable that particular signature product or the signature category is going to be. So that's the second biggest thing which we will see. That's that I think will Bangladesh experience. And the third biggest thing is the packaged food industry. I think we are just waiting for an innovation to happen out here. Currently, there is a lot of herd mentality in which the companies are performing and taking their products to the market. This is an area where homegrown companies rule the market. And here, I think the biggest thing is who's going to be the maverick out here, who's going to be able to bring that innovation, because we've been seeing it for the last 4-5 years, and I've been experiencing with some of my clients is that 10 taka, 20 taka price point is something which has locked with this entire category. So who's going to be the maverick out here? And I think there are some very interesting works which are happening by some of the companies. That's going to be the game changer as far as the FMCGs are concerned. So if you ask me from these perspective, these are the three things.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, we have got very three distinctive, indication from you. Now, Minhaj, what are the disruptions that you see, in this FMCG sector that are coming up? I mean, from your lens. I mean, you have extensively worked in food and also personal care, household care, and now you are leading the Unilever Consumer Care. From your experience and from your prediction, what are the disruptions that you see? If you can name 2-3 disruptions that will really shift the sector.
Yeah, thanks, Ashraf. I think Aditya has already touched upon some of these. Um, uh, 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 Let me give you a context quickly. Because FMCG as a sector is very complex, highly fragmented. You deal with plethora of products broken down in numerous SKUs. The country is still on a brick and mortar, traditional distribution model. Although we talk about e-com, but e-com, for example, in our business, e-com is still only about 1% of our business. So majority of the consumers are still actually going to a shop and buying their product. And even if you go into a trade, you will see huge assortment over there. Now, in a complex business, that we have, we already see a lot of shift that's happening. We see, if you look from a consumer profile perspective, you see that, and what we call LSM profile in Unilever language. LSM is lifestyle measure. We calculate from 0 LSM to up 7 plus, 8 plus, 10 plus. The higher are the more affluent ones, the have lots, and the lower ones are the have nots. And their lifestyle actually differs accordingly. You will see two faces of Bangladesh. While we see a lot of aspiring group, a big chunk moving up the LSM order, we also see a huge rural still exists. So this two face that we have right now, probably we'll see a shift. Rural will become more urban, or urban and rural combination, and you will see a lot of business coming through that. All right. Now, how do we? And then we also see a huge amount of young population coming up. The Gen Zs are going to play a big role, in terms with their demand, with their new thinking, with their new lifestyle, and with their aspiration. How do we cater to their need is a big area that we need to focus on. But if I break it down from a consumer, customer, and operations lens, I think one big shift that we expect to see going forward is on data and digital. Now, why I'm saying that, gone are the days where our focus would be only, even from a consumer perspective, our focus would be only on traditional media. The generation now, they spend a huge, their lifestyle has changed. They're into social media, they're into Netflix, they're into YouTube, they're always on. And reaching, and in the past, we used to have captive audience to communicate our product to. We won't be able to stick there. So reaching them is a big challenge. You will see from a relatively broader target audience, you have to break it down to much smaller cohorts of audience. Individual personalization will become extremely important, and that is one shift we will see. On the customer front, or on the traditional trade front, you will see wiring up or digitization over there will also, not necessarily through e-com, but also, each and every outlet can be digitized. For example, we already have introduced app during the COVID period where a retailer can order any of our product at any point in time, 24 hours. All right. And we will go and fulfill them. Our fulfillment time as of now is 1.8 days, which we are trying to bring it down. But we have already wired up to about 170,000 outlets out of close to 500,000 outlets that we directly reach, which means once you have that, you will have huge amount of data in your reservoir, which you can use to actually personalize, go for outlet based performance management. And once you can do that, the opportunity is huge. Now, this is one shift that I clearly see is going to come going forward. Some organizations are realizing it probably faster than others, but overall, there will be a time where when ignoring that will not be an option anymore. That's what I see. And on the operations end, I think automations will bring in a lot of efficiency, because efficiency will give you the needed investment support for the investment that the business will need going forward. I think the rest Aditya has already covered. That's from my perspective. I think data and digital will play a big role, and a big shift is going to happen going forward as we move in the next 2-3 years.
I think we had two brilliant minds giving the perspective on how shifts are going to take place. And Minhaj, thank you for putting the whole thing, in so nicely articulated to Aditya as well. Now, Parvez, can you hear me? Parvez, I think I just sent him a note.
Well, number one, my apologies because I could not hear properly. I'm having this, yes, in one hand, digitally we are advancing, but I'm facing the trouble here. So that's how the little part of life. I've been changing my places, locations in the house and all. But I was checking with Sharif. He says that he is absolutely fine. Sometimes it does the problem and Mr. Murphy exists. That's how it proves. So everything was fine. Even I checked in and all. So there is no noise at the house. But when it comes to the live streaming and all, I see Aditya is smiling. It's a big
No
time
worries,
and all.
no worries.
Okay. I don't know how much you can hear.
Write and you can hold the placard. We can read.
I could barely hear. Sorry?
We can have many alternative arrangements. Even you can write. I can write questions to you. You can answer because we can hear you.
Okay. Not very sure whether I'll be able to write and express the entire thing and all. Number one, time is limited. And number two, I see that there are a couple of things that needs to be covered. And importantly, we are on the live streaming. So people would love to basically hear us out. And we also want them to basically hear us out as well. Okay, I'll just be very brief because I could figure out both Aditya and Minhaj just covered a lot. But if you talk about the FMCG, how this is going to change or the trend looking like, is there any disruptions? I would say, number one, FMCG market is only going to grow and the rate of increasing is only going to be higher. Okay, so this is number one. Our economy is an absolutely fascinating. If you talk about the resiliency, because this is something I quote many times, say during the COVID time, we have seen the sectoral resiliency. We talk about the many sectors in the Bangladesh. But as a nation, we are such a resilient that has been demonstrated during the COVID time. So that's what I call this is one of the most resilient time. Whether many times we equate these things with the government sector or the agriculture farmer. But to me, during the COVID, we have really, as a nation, we have stood up as a resilient nation and all. So this is one. So I see that now our economy is growing. Even the day before yesterday, we all have seen the Bloomberg forecast and all. This is the 6.3 and this is going to be even higher, 6.5. So I see that we are, as an economy, we are growing and our FMCG sector particularly is only grow bigger and bigger. This is number one. Number two, the major shift that I see from our business point of view and also a little bit from the shift towards the quality products. If you talk about the food in particular, I see that there is a real shift taking place in terms of quality food, number one. Number two, there's a change in the consumer lifestyle, which is demanding much more convenience. And that is why lots of these ready to cook, ready to eat things are only gonna get more and more in the coming days. Probably Minhaj was talking about the digitalization. That's absolutely fine, though the e-commerce is still very small, but I see that this is going to catch up very fast. That's also another amazing thing in terms of the digital penetration, the way it has happened. The global exposure that the remote villages now started getting in and out. So there's more demand that is coming in. So FMCG is going to only increase in the coming years and all. If you talk about the disruptions, particularly, I see that the new products, quality products demand, that is where the disruption, the traditional products and all will eventually phase out. That's what my major take. So digitally, this is one, and the quality in the requirement or the demand for the quality products is only going to go up. That is what the major things. And the FMCG sector will grow much higher than the economic growth and all. So that is where the first thing that probably Ashraf you had been talking about.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Parvez. I mean, if I just
I
summarize
see
the
on my screen everybody is as a freeze.
Yeah. So what I was saying that, if we have to summarize, I mean, starting from Aditya to Minhaj to Parvez, there are few shifts that you have clearly said. So Aditya mentioned about more personalization, where companies will have to cater to very specific needs, and consumer will be at their freedom to choose and to narrow down their choices to micro level, and that will put the companies into real difficult kind of competition. And also what he said, that there will be new companies will come up with very specialized products, and those new brands will be really doing well. Now, whether they can really grow the business profitably, that is something to be seen. From Minhaj, we have understood the shifts. I mean, he has very elaborately said how digitization is taking place, how the efficiency at organization level, that needs to be driven. Digitization is not only about e-commerce; it is about the entire digitization of all channels and also the internal process. That was very nicely articulated, and for that, how a company can get a competitive advantage. That was something that he mentioned, that we have to be very watchful going forward. And from Parvez, of course, I mean, the conviction is reiterated that FMCG is only going to grow. And what Aditya gave actually, he tipped on the innovation in the packaged foods area, and Parvez just reiterated that how the food sector is going to grow, and how innovation is going to play a role. And in that journey, all the companies will have to really gear up themselves to realize the potential. Now, when we are looking at my question, to all these possibilities, this efficiency game, this personalization game, I want it right now, I want it my way, this kind of game, and we are in a global competitive situation. Do you think we have the right people in place? Of course, we have the youth in place, but the leadership development, is it happening in Bangladesh? Not only the CEOs, I'm saying from mid-level to the senior level, and then I will later on connect also with the academics, how we can connect with our schools, so a holistic approach how we can take. But first question, Aditya, do you see our business leaders, mid-level and senior level, they're really geared up to approach this uncertain future?
No, the answer is no, obviously. I mean, I've been very fortunate to be experiencing different kind of managerial style companies. At the same time, got the opportunity to work with different sectors over the last decade. Bangladesh has been having so far, we have been having two spectrum of kind of companies. So one is typically the MNC kind of a company, and the other are typically homegrown companies which are run by families. So these are the two basically kind of company buckets which we are having now, organizational buckets. Now, I don't think both have been working in the right direction so far. Now, typically in a multinational company, it is highly process driven and it is highly structured. So what we've been seeing is leaders who are getting churned in multinational companies, and I'm not talking. There are of course exceptions everywhere, but by and large, what we see is that we teach them to follow a particular process and a particular manner. So even if they are told to think out of the box, that out of the box is thinking is within a particular idea. So it is not the big idea which they really work upon, but small ideas within that big idea. So it's all very structured, and it forces a person to compartmentalize his or her way of thinking. That is one side of the bucket. The other side of the bucket is the homegrown, family-run businesses. Again, there are a few exceptions, but by and large, what I've seen is the entire way of working is you have got to follow a particular process. You have to follow a particular direction. You don't really empower a person to think on his or her own. So we have this particular challenge out here, and at this moment we've still not moved into the next basic step, which I always feel that, I've been personally always following this philosophy of the three E's in my way of working, which is like, let's experiment. And I do experiment with my clients. So it's experiment, experience, and then finally you've got to enjoy that particular process. So the three E's is something which is missing at this moment. It's worked for me. I think it worked for my clients as well. So that's my take at this moment.
Thank you. I mean, this is something that we at Bangladesh Brand Forum and also as industry, now that we are little veterans, we have spent certain time, that we have been feeling that there is a gap, and that needs to be. Now, if I take your answer where you straight away said, that the answer is no to the question, and the reasons are very nicely articulated. With that, I go to Minhaj, because I know Unilever or multinational, I mean, you have also worked in Nestle, that they have a very specific, structured process of developing people, I mean, if you can just cite some of the examples, and you interact a lot with business schools from Unilever and personally. I mean, first, if you can say what are the gaps that you see and how companies like yours, have a program to develop the next gen leaders. I think that way it will be very good.
Yeah. So thanks, Ashraf. I'll pick it up from where Aditya left, and just to add to what Aditya is saying, give you an example. Diversity and inclusion sits very much in the center of Unilever, which means what we want is representation of the society into our team as well. For example, it is not only about religious diversity, gender diversity, it is also about education diversity, it is also about organization diversity, industry diversity. So what we want is people from other industry, other organization come in as mid-career recruits as well, so that we have the right representation of the society, so that, and we don't get into silo thinking. We don't want everybody to think in the same way. We want to learn from other organizations. Now, in order to establish DNI, intentionally we look for people from other organizations. In most of the cases, you will see people who are coming in are actually also coming in from other multinationals as well, and not so much from the local organization, right? Whereas our intention is to drive diversity and get in people from both, organizations which are more structured, multinationals, also local one. And I'm not talking about the very structured local organization like we have in Square or ACI. I'm saying, the other homegrown ones. There are many others. We struggle to bring in. Similarly, if you look into institutions, education institutions, also there is a limitation, and you have to stretch yourself really hard to actually pick the best out of those. So first is in the philosophy itself, how do you drive diversity and how do you bring in people from different background plays a role on how you create leadership, right? So that there is a shared knowledge circulating within the organization. Number two is, do we have clear defined standard of leadership? When you want to create leadership, people need to be very clear on what we are talking about, what we mean by leadership. In most of the cases, what we see in organizations is, people are judged mostly on the what part of delivery and not necessarily on the how part of delivery, where leadership stands. Okay, and we have clearly defined 7 standard of leadership in Unilever. And when we evaluate a person, we evaluate them not only based on what they have delivered, but also based on how they have demonstrated those leadership skills. Leadership skills like personal mastery, leadership skill like business acumen, leadership skill like agility, their emotional intelligence, talent catalyst, passion for growth. These are all leadership skills that we want, leadership behaviors that we want people to demonstrate. And whenever we are having a conversation around people, individual or group or team, we actually look into how they are demonstrating that. So once you have it very clear that what is what you're going to deliver, this is clear. Leadership behavior is, this is what we expect from you. That's clear. Third is the value system that we expect the entire organization to live by. Once that is clear, then at every layer you evaluate people in a structured way based on that. Once you do that, that is how leadership develop. That's one part of it. The other part, of course, is the business acumen. I've talked about how digital and data will play a big role. The question is, people sitting at the top, they not be best equipped or the most knowledgeable one to transfer an organization from traditional way of working to a digital way of working. So you need to bring in expertise over there. And the basic that Aditya has touched upon, that most of the organizations that we see over here are homegrown family driven organization, and in most of the cases decision making also happens in a centralized, right from the top comes down. I think that is where a big shift is needed. From a centralized decision making, you need to move into service leadership, where a leader's role would be more about providing service, removing barriers in an organization for others to flourish, and hand over decision making at a lower level so that they are more empowered, have that psychological safety. If the safety net is not there, people will not try out new things, they will not experiment, and learning will get blocked, leadership development will also get blocked. That psychological safety, I really doubt whether it's there in all organization. Once you have that going, once you move into a service leadership role instead of a complete decision making role, that is when you will see people below you will start getting developed, and you will see a lot of leadership getting developed in the pipeline. I think those are the things that's missing: functional expertise, knowledge on technology, or knowledge in areas that's going to flourish going forward, and how do you develop that knowledge in a structural way. How do you create your expectation very clear, both in terms of what are the what deliveries, what are the leadership behaviors, what are the value system you need to demonstrate, and judge people based on that. That is how you grow leadership. I think that structure is missing, which that is how we run Unilever, and I've seen this. Unfortunately, I have not worked in a local organization, but whatever I get to see, I think this is a gap that I see exists.
No, thank you, Minhaj. Now that Parvez is having certain technological issues, maybe we can utilize his time by interacting more with you, and maybe I can add one or two comments here. I just had a funny story. Once in an organization in Bangladesh, in an international organization, a survey was done looking at the IT skill of the person and what generation of computer, the laptop the person is using. So higher the position, so the generation of laptop was given with, it was more hierarchical. The senior most person was having the most advanced gadget. However, skill set wise, the senior most person has had the least skill,
Yeah.
and that's where, whereas the youth, the first line, second line, they're highly skilled, but they're not equipped with the right kind of equipments.
I had this,
Yeah, sorry, Aditya, carry on.
yeah, I had this very interesting episode way back in 99 2000 when I was in Marico in India. And at that time this colored monitor started coming into play. So I was in the treasury department, and I was handling the banking area of Marico at that point. So in my team, what had happened is, like, there were some 5 colored monitors which were coming into the entire company. That was the first time it was coming. And the then CFO said, and his way of thinking was so clear. Exactly the same thing. He said, like, those 5 monitors need to be there with the lowest staff member. And I was really pissed off. I was like, I needed to have that colored monitor. But he said that you're not doing the bank reconciliation. So, so we used to have the Citibank cash management system. So there used to be the reconciliation between the bank book and the cash book. Okay. So he said, like, the colored monitor needs to be there with him, because he will be able to see the blue bar and the red bar and all that. And you don't need it. So companies who have worked on those particular philosophies have really flourished, rather than, on their seniority piece. So I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in over here and just crossed my mind about a couple of things, and picking on what Minhaj is saying. companies, when you talked about the shifts which are required, organizations who are moving from the profitability, profit mindset to a purpose mindset. Basically, from a pure accounting perspective, if you stop looking at the profit and loss account but start looking at the balance sheet, that is the starting point in which most of the companies, the homegrown companies, are missing out. And as Minhaj said about the organization structure and all, we are more into the hierarchy based kind of a thing, whereas companies who are really pushing the envelope are those who are looking more at a network kind of a scenario. And basically, from a network perspective, is how do non-reporting people can influence members of within the organization on a particular purpose. So that along with the moving from the control to the empower kind of a journey, these are few things. All those companies who are working on are actually able to bring in innovation, bring in growth, bringing the right transformation, which others are missing the bus at this moment.
Interestingly, Ashraf,
Minhaj, yes, you're saying
the,
something.
the
Then I'll
person
move to
who
the next
gets
question.
the person who gets the best laptop is also least curious about using that. Whereas people, Gen Zs who are sitting at the bottom of the pyramid in the organization, you give them, they will look at it like a child playing with a toy. They will discover so many things out of it. But unfortunately, we don't give them that. We give it to people who are probably the most difficult to change and less curious because they have run through a life and not at all that interested. So there is clearly a big mismatch that you see over there.
Okay, great. Now, in that context, what we see, the leaders, the top leaders will have to drive this change across the organization to face the new world. We are already into digital world, but it is going to get crazy in the next couple of years. In next 3 to 5 years. I mean, when Minhaj is saying that you have already brought under your network 170,000 outlets, I mean, one can see that maybe some people are sleeping, but silently somebody is doing the revolution. So in those kind of context, what is the skill gap? Specifically, I mean, just shortly, if you can say that you see among our leaders in the industry that we have, and how do we equip our mid-level and senior level leaders with the right kind of skill development programs? What is your suggestion on that? I'm asking this for another reason also. Now we are expecting, everybody is forecasting a recession coming in. And if it is so, because, in the West, many things are happening, and with the recession in West, our RMG sector and other sectors, export sectors are also connected. Now, in that context, the journey going forward is going to be, a little challenging. One will have to really demonstrate a character. The tenacity has to be there. The strength has to be there. So considering all those are a macro perspective and also a digital transformation perspective, what is the skill gap that you see, and how do you think the leaders can take up the program to minimize that skill gap? Aditya or Minhaj, I mean, Minhaj, you want to start?
Yeah, I can. In fact, part of it I've already said.
Mentioned, right?
One big area is the technological knowledge. You know, we have to be very conversant with the language that the technological revolution is going to bring in. While we, for example, let me give you, when you give a brief on media, in a traditional media, it's very easy. You say, okay, mother's age between this to this, SSC AB is where I want to reach. But when you give the same brief for a social media, it has to be broken down. It's much sharper, cohort, and probably from a one cohort you will get into multiple cohort. Same when you digitize front end, digitize traditional trade, you start talking languages which are not used by a typical salesperson, right? So that knowledge is extremely important. I think skills on data, making sense out of data, because sometimes we churn a lot of data but we struggle on what we do with it. Let me give you an example. We collect, through our activation, we'll collect a lot of memo from trade, and these are all handwritten memos which then gets converted into digital data with the help of a vendor, for example. But once you get that data, you are in a position to do basket analysis of a shopper, through which you can identify gap either through product affinity or through geography affinity. Somebody who is using a Surf Excel but using a very mass shampoo, you can always say, okay, and higher some consumers affinity is higher, you can actually introduce a Tresemme or a Dove to that shopper by doing a remarketing. You have their phone number, you connect with them, you give them an offer to try out, right? That's individual marketing. Now somebody needs to have that technological knowledge or the knowledge of sense making out of data. I think that is where an expertise needs to be developed. What we have in Unilever is a digital hub, a cross-functional team with people expert on digital, whose job is also to build capability within the organization on the digital front. I think on the business acumen front, that is one. The other is cross-learning. Cross-learning is, we are used to working in functional silos. But when you get into a leadership role, more into general management, you need to have an understanding across function. Now, once you start doing cross-learning at a lower level, somebody who has worked in marketing, put that person into sales, and then maybe into supply chain as well for customer service. Okay, somebody who has worked in finance, bring that person into marketing, so that a cross-learning is happening, and the person also get that opportunity to develop in multi-functions and develop their knowledge. So business acumen can be developed specifically on the technological front and also cross-learning. I think that is one skill gap. And the other big area that where I am a bit concerned is on the softer skill, where people struggle in a volatile business. As you move up the ladder, and then there will be a lot of shock waves coming in. We have seen COVID hitting us hard, and while we thought that this is the peak, then once the COVID is stabilizing, I won't say COVID is over, but the intensity has gone down, right? It's not a big concern anymore. Now we are hit with currency, uh, uh, devaluation, inflation happening. People are feeling the pressure of price. Organization are struggling with profitability. So there are many other shock waves coming in, and going forward, it's going to keep coming in. Now that is where your softer skills are becoming more and more important. Earlier, we used to rely on IQ. Now, EQ becomes very important. How are you developing people on the emotional intelligence? SQ, how are you developing people on the social intelligence? And the other one is adversity, the AQ that we talk about nowadays. Adversity. How do you develop people who are robust enough to wave through the wither through the adversities that we face every now and then. So I think both business acumen and softer skills are the areas where we do see a gap, and we need to develop as well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. While I was listening to you, I was also writing a question to Parvez. So that's why, don't feel that, I was not listening to you. Very, very nice, Minhaj. The skill gaps and the way you have talked about IQ, EQ, and AQ, adversity quotient, adversity management quotient. I mean, this is something new for me. I mean, that I have learned. Now, Aditya, I mean, do you have any tip for the local companies to really look for, how to develop, that system in place? I mean, why should only the international companies or the multinationals will have all the stories? Why can't strong local Bangladeshi companies have a similar kind of a story of developing people, leadership, and the next gen? I mean, what is your suggestion?
So I think I wouldn't say that homegrown companies are not working towards it. There is some real interesting, fascinating work which is happening behind the scenes in some of the organizations, and I have been part of some of them. But the key starting point out here is do organizations have, how do they work on the purpose on which they have built that particular business? Because the whole thought process that a profit or money is a byproduct and not the starting and the end game is something which most of the homegrown companies have still not been able to cross that bridge. Now, if organizations start with that belief that okay, fine, I need to have, so this is the reason why I have started this business. What is the sustainability thought process? Why am the question of why? Now there are organizations who are working on that why right now. So the moment you have that why, that's when you have your values, your purpose, your governance, your code of conducts, ethics. Everything will start falling in place, and that to me is something which is a area which most of the homegrown companies haven't shifted their needle on. And so to answer your question, if that is something which is worked upon, then I think the others fall in place. And senior leaders, what we have at this moment, the inability to really treat that soft skill or the soft stuff as the hard stuff. While Manas talked about how do you funnel that particular information into a proper knowledge and into a particular decision making, and make it lucid enough so that you can take good decisions. The other pieces which he touched in the end was about the entire soft skills arena. The soft skill, that the soft skill is the hard stuff, is something which is missing at this moment. So these are things where if that journey is started, then most of the questions which we are talking about is actually taken care of. So to me, the need for organizations to realize that every initiative, it's either, so any initiative that I start, is it a business or is it an organization that I want to set up? And basically, an organization is something which lives on purpose. It works on a particular value system. Business is all about making a plus or a minus. So if you are going to treat everything as business, then you will never be able to move that particular, which most of the MNCs have already traveled that journey.
Excellent. So you have talked about purpose. We talk about sustainability, everything. When we talk about sustainability, people focus more on what I have seen is on the environment. Profitability is one thing, but also on environment and other things. Part of it also nowadays, SDG is in the focus. That is also I have seen. But we do not talk much about ethics, business ethics. We sometimes touch about the governance and all, more to do with the financial governance. But do you think there is a need that can be explored, that if you have a corporate ethics center where people can come and all these family run businesses, local companies, even international companies, they can send their executives to learn and to get examples from around the globe to talk about for somebody to become a sustainable organization without having a proper ethics system in place, you cannot sustain. So that is a core ingredient. So what do you think, Minhaj? Oh, Parvez, sorry, I just missed out on your response. Can we come back to you after this? Minhaj, bola, I'm writing words.
Yeah. Okay. So ethics. So what has happened is, given that I've worked in two organizations.
Ashraf, are you calling me, or because I could barely hear you and all? Okay, I understand now. Minhaj is basically talking, so I will come back after that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
Minhaj, please carry on.
Given that I've worked mostly in Nestle and Unilever. Ethics is something that is very much part of the value system, and it's in the DNA of all the employees. But what I feel is, and it's very difficult for me to actually relate to other organizations, but I'll still give my perspective on it. One is, again, at the very beginning, you have to be very clear on what your values are in the organization, and people need to live by it. Second is, ethics needs to be defined clearly as well. What are the do's and don'ts? All right. For someone, ethics only might mean bribery, and we have to be protective against that. For some other, ethics will also mean, what are the areas of conflict of interest, monetary or non-monetary, and how do we take care of that? you know how do you deal with regulators, how do you deal with government, how do you deal with vendors? Each and every area, what are the ethical behavior you have to live by? Even your distant cousin, if they're getting into an organization and you don't work with them, are you declaring that somebody I know is coming into an organization, I want to declare it up front? Some organization will not even think uh, that's an ethic. I tell you, I get requests from many sending me a resume, even my relatives, and they get offended when I say, no, this is my relative, I'll have to declare and I'll pass it to somebody else. They really struggle to understand what I'm talking about. That fine line of ethics needs to be very clear. Don't sit on the fence. Sharp identification, clarity on the do's and don'ts. And once you have that, have the business integrity workshop on a regular basis, irrespective of, I know people know everything about it. If you don't do a refresher over time, your this all this message that you are giving to people gets lost. So it's important that you continuously give the message, do the workshop, and find out the near misses when it comes to ethics violation, right? Once you do that, people will have a much stronger awareness of this, full clarity on what are the do's and don'ts, and they will live by that. I think that is something that needs to be done. Overall, I feel this is one area of collaboration as well, where if there is an ethics center, we don't see any conflict in this. Organizations who are ahead, who have got much more clarity on this, much more matured, can also come and support, giving clarity to the entire FMCG industry on how businesses should be run in an ethical manner. So that's my perspective. As I've said, I've only worked in 2 organizations. My perspectives are based on what I've seen, mostly in these organizations.
Yep. I think we can now go to Parvez. I already actually posted a question to him. And then I would request if you can also combine this ethics thing to your answer, Parvez.
Okay, I could see your message and all. It's a very unique experience that I am having. So a lot of, I can see your message, and I also got the question in the text as well. Okay, right. Once again, my apologies. I could not hear you properly and all. But nevertheless, I see the question that you had been talking about the next level leadership and how do you manage your risk, empowering you. And at the same time, there have been some discussions about these local companies and all, the how to develop. Right. So first of all, I see it like this, that the local industry in Bangladesh is doing absolutely fabulous. They are driving the growth and all, so in many of the sectors. But having worked in the local industry in the senior level, where I see the next opportunity. The next opportunity is to create, take it to the next level. Next level is the global level and all. Because the local companies, they have all those materials, ingredients there. And what we need to do is there's just a little bit of, I would say that the tuning together, that symphony coming in terms of creating that competitive advantages to take it onto the global level. We have got many organizations in the country. Even the one that I belong is the Square group now, Square Food, many of the organizations. Now their leap is for the next level, which is the global level. Say even this time, this COVID has exposed us on a couple of things about. Number one, the supply chain vulnerability, then the way the cost increase took place and all. We were absolutely, I would say that we are still struggling to manage these two, the cost increase and the supply chain and all. and on the other hand, we need to ensure that the products are there in the right time. Okay, and well, there are a lot of talks going on as far as the price and other things are concerned. So having said that, what I'm saying, the local industry, they are number one doing good, but what I see is that the each of the industry, they are vertically very strong. So the people who are working in the supply chain, finance, what it needs to take it is some cross-functional projects so that the leadership goes to the next level. That's what we are trying to do here at SFDL Square Food. Okay, so this will give the exposure to the people. This is the another way of developing the resources. You throw them into the new challenges and they will come up. So that is where we need to develop more. I think that's an area that we need to excel. Theoretically, classroom-based training, this is fine, but it is more important to throw them into the real life thing. That is what's more important. So there is another very good strong DNA that this local industry that drives. That's the called result orientation. That we need to get these things done, achieve these things. Okay, so that is where now, as I've spoken about it, the challenge for the local industry is to benchmark, taking it to the global level and all. What it takes. We have the resources, we have the strength, financial capabilities, and the process. So now a little bit of tuning in terms of the processes and focusing on creating that competitive advantages over the others. So that is where, because the market is also going global. We are also exporting to many of the countries and all. So that the products is also going to come in the near future. That is where we need to basically put ourselves as far as the global things is concerned. That is where the thing is. So I don't know whether how much I was audible and all, and how much really I could answer to your queries, Ashraf. Oh, thank you. You could hear me clearly and all.
Ashraf, you're on mute.
Sorry. I understood very clearly, Parvez, your point of view and how you're developing your next level by giving them cross-functional exposure. What Aditya and Minhaj was also talking about, besides the hard skills, you need the soft skills. And for leaders to achieve that senior level, you will need to, equip themselves with all those emotional intelligence, adversity management intelligence. Recession is coming, to have the, that kind of patience and character. So the IQ, EQ, AQ, all this needs to be taken care of. And if the local companies can come up faster than what they're doing now, it will be better. We are almost at the last 5 minutes of the program. Now, I have a question. Do you think there is a potential for this FMCG sector in Bangladesh, or any sector, Do you think there is a need for a leadership academy kind of institution where you can groom, different layers of leaders? All these programs that you have mentioned, you can have more company-specific, business-specific skill sets, but some kind of general skill development programs that the way we see business schools do outside the, in INSEAD school or even Harvard or in other places. Do you think there is a possibility and some of our institutions can take it up? What do you think? IBA, NSU, all these universities are there, Dhaka University.
Yeah, I think there is a need for this, because there is a big need gap in this particular area. Because while different organizations have been following their own pathway to creating leaders, I think the biggest need gap out here is how do you select leaders? The entire journey of is it that I'm going to, because at this moment leaders are chosen more out of academics, out of experience, and there are set mindsets or certain processes through which we follow. But A is obviously inculcating those best practices as to how do you do it. Obviously, at the end of the day, process is what is required to get to a particular end. So how do you sharply define those processes? At the same time, how do you not hard code those processes in a manner where, which I always tell when I talk to my sales guy, that there is, in any sales target which you give, there is something called a logic and a magic. When I give a target, 80% is logic. So uita to the actual, if a person is using his common sense and diligently does 80% target to hoye jabe, that is something which is done. The question is that 20% magic. And I think even when you're selecting leaders, this entire thing of how do you notice that spark, not just because he or she is from a particular school or has this particular experience. How do you cut that and select the right leaders is something which is a great way of starting and identifying future leaders within the country. Because if you look at the talent, it's amazing. The talent is amazing. We just need to be able to identify the right people. So according to me, an academy would definitely be of great help. And second thing is from especially from homegrown companies, and I'm taking the liberty of talking more about homegrown because I've got that diverse opportunity to experience them. Is that how do you groom the second and the third gen family team? How do you make them, because most of them have learned from certain business schools, which could be from countries outside of Bangladesh. But at the end of the day, you're doing business in Bangladesh, so you need to know the local game. And how do you localize the entire learning is something which I don't think that tailor making has happened. So that's the second piece, the reason why I feel an academy will help.
Excellent. So you're just echoing, my sentiment. With that sentiment, actually, I asked the question. Now, Minhaj, if you can add to that, I mean, whether there is a need, we understand there is a need, but and what are the things that to be done? Aditya has also touched on that. But if you can give more specific 2-3 suggestions, what are the first few issues that this academy should address to develop our workforce for the 2030 and 2041 journey?
If you ask me, Aditya covered it in such a nice way that I'll really struggle to add anything to that. You have already mentioned that there is a need. Answer is yes. Just be cognizant of two things. One is, while we talk about large structured multinational companies, there are also many things that we can learn from the local organizations. So when you work out an academy, we need to bring in expertise from both the areas so that somebody who's getting into the academy and learning from that actually gets to see both, expertise. And I personally feel there are many areas where local companies are ahead of us. Sometimes I feel they're more nimble, they're more closer, they sometimes make decisions faster than us. How do you make fast decision making is something that we sometimes want to learn from other organizations. How do you roll out so many? If I talk about Pran RFL, how Sunny Bhai rolls out so many innovation in such a short period, and some work, some doesn't work. The ones that's working, what they do with that, the ones that's not working, what they do with that as well. There are so many things that you can learn from local organizations as well. That I think there should be, as I've mentioned in the past, two clear legs on this. One is business acumen, what skills needed, what are the future knowledge needed, and how academy can drive that. I've talked about technology as a big one, and then a big gap area are the softer skills that I've talked about. EQ, I don't think in a very hierarchical organization, driving EQ becomes very difficult because that safety net is not there. People are just followers, and only followers, if they are not pushed to the right level, will struggle to actually transform themselves in a leader. So how do we break that barrier is one point that we need to address to the academy. So those softer skills that I talk about, whether it's EQ, whether it's social skills, whether it's adversity skills, you can bring in along with the business acumen to actually really make it effective.
I just wanted to add one thing, and I'm sorry, I'm going out of turn. But personally, I've learned entrepreneurship after working with homegrown companies. Till such time I was working in a multinational company, it was more like, okay, fine, I am a leader, it is all set and all. but actually ব্যবসা কি করে করতে হয়, and how do you I personally became much more, I would say, adulthood came after I started working with homegrown companies. Yeah, but there's lots to learn from there. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked almost 20 years as corporate executive, and last quarter of 2013.
Ashraf, I would just like to add on something here. Sorry. Sorry, probably Aditya was saying something, though I could barely figure it out, but I can see that you're smiling something very unique. On the senior leadership things, probably the discussion was going on. I will just add on some of my thoughts once Aditya finishes. Sorry to interrupt, Aditya. And please, Aditya.
Yeah, I'm done.
You want me to continue? Because I'm having multi-channels, audio, visual, and then also right up here. Oh, you asked me to continue?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is one of my favorite topic, that developing leaders for the future for Bangladesh. And my perspective is, I would say that like this, as I call it, relatively simple. Number one, we have got plenty of role models in the country. Even before the start of the program, we were informally chatting and say what Shopna has earned the fit. She is now the regional head of the Marks & Spencer. This is one sector we are less exposed, garments. I am little exposed because I worked 3 years as the CEO of the Violetex Limited, is one of the top in the garments industry. What happened? Shopna, what the level that she has achieved, what we need to do is that, then coming back, say Mr. Minhaj Unilever, Javed is there, is another role model. Mr. BAT head, Shehzad Munim is another role model. These are absolutely top people have reached. Now what happens? We need to, and there are a lot of success stories in the local industries where there are backbones, middle scale, mid-range leaders and all. What we need to do is that we need to get this exposure. Say these leaders, they need to talk to the mid-levels, to mid-range, where there will be aspiration set. Then we need basically more of Javed in the future. I'm not just only saying the multinationals. I'm saying in the locals, because that's our role model. Whether we like it or not, Mr. Javed, Mr. Shehzad Munim, Ms. Shopna, they are the role models in the country. We were listing down the other day how many of our, say Ata Safdar is our role model in the country. We have seen in our very young stage of when we started our career. He was basically the marketing director, then he moved to the sales director and all. Then he was the managing director, the Rekit and all. So these are the people where people need to hear, listen to them, their success stories. And what will happen out of 100 people listening, we will get basically 5 new CEOs in the future. Probably that's not in our era, but another 5 years, 10 years down the road, that is where we will be able to give them exposure. Then what? Academics is one. We left IBA back in 25 years and all. So 25 years into the work life and all. And there are plenty of things we need to find out which is the industry, because that's not talked about. So garments is another thing which has not been talked about and all. So fascinating stories. Let's hear from them. What is the, and then there will be this will inspire. This will definitely inspire. I can say that if someone listens to Safdar Bhai for half an hour and all, that's absolutely fascinating. Then people will be, say, even Javed and Shehzad Munim and all these people, they are the role model for the youth. Okay, so I would request the brand forum, that the platform that you are creating for the leadership and all, you arrange those mid-level people to come and listen to them. That is where in India we see there are plenty of such things that happens and all. This is a very big country and all. There are plenty of resources. Okay, so anyway, I won't basically take it much, as I think I could make my point across, that there are a lot of role models in our country, and there are a lot of good level mid-range managers who needs to transform them as the leader in the future to take this private sector to the next level. And our Bangladesh, the growth is led by the private sector and all. And there are plenty of opportunities from the economic point of view, parameters and everywhere that we can grow. And we need a lot of resources and everything. So that's what. Thank you so much, Ashraf.
Thank you so much, Parvez. I think you made, the initial hard work for the Leadership Academy a little easy. Of course, listening to role models is one of the key ingredient in the Leadership Academy. Without listening to the role model leaders, actually the new generation will not.
Well, sorry, I missed out one important point. Mr. Minhaj, Mr. Aditya. Sorry, when I was talking about Zaved and all, Minhaj, you are another role model sitting here. Mr. Aditya is another role model sitting here and all. So that is where once they share. So it's absolutely.
Very good. So this was one of the 9 sector-specific dialogues that is, BBF is having prior to the Leadership Summit. I think, to me, this was very enlightening, this entire discussion. And thank you, each of the panelists, Parvez, Mr. Aditya, Mr. Minhaj, for your, very insightful participation, your deliveries, your comments. I mean, it was very helpful. I think BBF team, the research team, will take very careful note of today's discussion. And on the Grand Gala on 5th of November, we will see a culmination of all the inputs coming together as a strategy paper for leadership development program for Bangladesh in the next few years in business sector. So thank you so much, Aditya, Minhaj, and Parvez, and all of you, all the audience, all the participants, the viewers. We wish you a very good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.